Welcome to the Seahawkers podcast with your hosts, Adam Emmert.
This isn't a Hallmark movie. Sally Fields doesn't star in this film. This is Left Tackle.
And Brandon Schultz.
I believe, based on everything that I've seen from Bleacher Report in the past, that this is Jason Cole's fault.
Go Hawks!
This is the Seahawkers podcast. I'm Brandon Schultz of the Military Seahawkers. And joining me, my good buddy and Montana Seahawker, Adam Emmert.
Welcome to my third favorite week of the offseason, Brandon. This is it.
Third favorite.
Yes. You want to know why?
Yes.
This is the last week of stupid speculation. We got the draft coming up on Thursday. We're going to know things. We can talk about real dudes doing real things. It's going to be awesome. This is the last week we got to suffer through the nonsense season completely. I mean, there's still going to be some. This is the last week of it, because after the draft, you got a few guys you can go over. We can talk to our rivals, our Know Your Rivals series, and then it'll be training camp, and we'll have stories through that. And it'll be actual dudes doing actual things. This is the last week we have to suffer through this, man. Are you excited? Are you fired up?
This feels like the last week of the worst part of the offseason.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. It's my third favorite week of the offseason.
It totally makes sense now. And I would agree. And it is kind of the end of the super silly part of this, at least this part of the offseason. But you do get a lot of smoke coming from various teams leading up to the draft. All of a sudden the Browns are interested in taking a quarterback. All of a sudden the 49ers are interested in taking a quarterback. And that might be one of the worst things that they could do based on some of the defensive players that are really at the top of the draft board.
Maybe not. I mean, it's not like they have quarterbacks right now.
No.
If you've got the number one pick, it'd be hard not to take a dude that you think might be able to play.
And that's the key. You have to really know that he's going to be able to play.
No, you don't. On quarterbacks, you roll the dice, man. You don't have to actually know. You just roll the dice
with the number one, number two pick.
Yeah. How many times do you have it? I mean, unless you're the Cleveland Browns, you don't have it every other year. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So, you gotta pull the trigger when you can.
Well, we are going to talk quarterbacks in this show. Adam, you're going to run down who your top quarterbacks are. If you were picking number one, maybe you could let us know which one of these quarterbacks that you would go after.
Sure.
And we'll get into that. We are also going to be talking draft with Mr. Rob Staton of SeahawksDraftBlog.com. Last year, he came on the show. He predicted Germain Ifedi would get picked in the first round by the Seahawks. And that happened. So now it's on Rob to go back to back in 2016, 2017.
Yeah, no pressure.
No pressure at all.
Yeah.
John Schneider was in the news this week, and we have some news from that press conference. And our schedule analyst, Dave Bloomquist, has his thoughts on where maybe the team got screwed this year with the schedule.
Oh, man, you mean they got screwed? Like they have to play 8 teams at home and then 8 teams away, and then their divisional rivals 2 times? Like, they must have got screwed by that. Like they have to play the same type of schedule that everybody else does. That's screwed. Screwed.
We're going to find out.
I love Bloomy, man, but man, sometimes I wonder if he's a big Alex Jones fan or something. Like, if he's really into conspiracy theory, or if it's just kind of a side hobby for him. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. If he's all in, or if it's just recreational.
Right. This is where he allows himself to go down the crazy rabbit hole, which is probably what I would guess. This is one area where he goes down the crazy rabbit hole.
I feel
which
like
is fine. We all have them.
I think we can all be recreational conspiracy theorists from time to time. It's fun to a degree.
Armchair conspiracy theorists. You bet. Yeah.
Adam, let's get right into it with the news.
And by news, you mean things that aren't happening that makes it that end up being news?
Well, maybe it qualifies as actual news because John Schneider gave a press conference and he talked about things, and you can report on the things that he's talked about.
Especially the things that he talked about that aren't happening.
Like Richard Sherman not getting traded. Yeah. Holy smokes. You're telling me that this is not going to happen?
No catfish way. Richard Sherman is going to be a Seahawk this next year. God, I wish I would have found that website that was 8-1 for the odds, man. Like, that was dumb by me. I needed to make that effort.
Yeah.
Like, that was free money. That was free money.
And we all missed out on it.
Golly. Unreal. So, yeah, no no big surprise. John Schneider came out and said that they've moved past the Richard Sherman trade talk. You know, I mean, he did also follow that up with, well, if somebody, you know, called up and offered me, you know,
something crazy
like J.J. Watt, their first 3 first-round picks, you know, for the next 3 years, and you know, a boatload of cash and half of a timeshare in Florida, like you probably makes that deal. You know what I mean? But
so how was the headline not John Schneider still considering offers for Richard Sherman?
I think maybe we shamed the Seahawks media into stopping. I think that's it. That's my personal belief.
I hope that we are that influential that we're making that happen.
Well, all I know is that it was nonsense before, and they're laying off the nonsense now. So
it's good news for fans either way.
Absolutely. But no surprise there. He's in the building for voluntary workouts along with Cam and Earl. The Legion of Boom is there, and they're getting ready for this next season, you know, to try to pursue the championship once again. No surprise. I think we're all happy, right? Like now that we can be done talking about this, like that's real nice.
Yeah, we can all calm ourselves just a little bit. There's one, just not having that worry maybe going into the draft that
if you had it, I guess, yeah.
If that's what I'm saying. But there's people that legitimately, if they listen to Pro Football Talk with Mike Florio, that was his big hammering point, was that Goodell's going to come up to the podium at some point in the draft and announce that Richard Sherman's been traded. But John Clayton with 710 ESPN talks about how veteran guys don't get traded during the draft because most teams, if they're trading for a veteran player, want to bring that guy in for a physical and not
Correct.
just trade them, just out of the blue for an older player.
Right. That little minor detail there that does seem to prevent trades on draft day for veteran players. Yeah, I mean, it just all pointed to this. I'm glad that it's over. It's something that we don't have to worry about until next offseason. So fantastic. And then we also had the news that the Oakland Raiders have put a quote unquote deadline on Marshawn Lynch going into the draft.
Good luck with that, Oakland.
Yeah, we'll see how that works, right?
Marshawn's deadline is week 1 of the NFL season.
Is it even that? I mean, can he just? You're telling me that if Marshawn Lynch rolled up week 4 in Oakland and was like, "Yeah, I'm ready.
Yeah,
I'm ready to roll.
Pay me."
You don't think Reggie McKenzie's giving John Schneider a call and being like, "All right, so what do we got to do here?" and making it happen?
That's a good point. Yeah, there is no deadline.
There is no deadline.
The trade deadline would be the deadline, because after that, then Marshawn Lynch would have to go through the waiver process, right?
Right. That makes some sense. So maybe that's the only real deadline. But yeah, you go ahead, Reggie. Like, put that deadline on Marshawn. See how that works out for you.
Yeah, well, I know the Seahawks would probably like to know, because picking up an additional pick in the draft would be an okay thing.
Well, look, here's the thing. I said on the last podcast that I put the Marshawn thing at about 40% to happen. Like the idea that he would play for the Raiders, maybe about a 40% chance. I take that down to a 28% chance now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not 24?
Nope, 28.
Okay.
28. Yeah. I mean, I understand why you'd want to go with 24, but I'm giving the little bit, those 4 extra percentage points over Marshawn's number to the idea that maybe he making people poop their pants like linebackers. Like, just coming through the line and just destroying people. I think he misses that a little bit.
Yeah, once McKenzie put the deadline on him, my percentage went down too. I can't be 50-50 at this point either. So
No.
The other thing, John Schneider talked about, he was asked quite a few questions about the draft, including, the team priorities. He wouldn't answer that. There were quite a few questions that he just wasn't keen on answering going into the draft, which makes sense.
Well, look, the reporter's got to ask it, and John Schneider's got to shoot it down. I think my favorite of all those questions that were asked that he kind of shot down was the one where the reporter asked about mistakes in drafting people.
You talked about self-scouting. When you look at mistakes the last several years or whatever, has there been any trend or theme or anything that you guys have noticed?
Yes.
And I like that for a couple reasons. Number one, what that sounded like to me was, we look back and we've kind of screwed up this offensive line thing, and I think we know how. That's kind of what I got out of it. And I was like, all right, that I like that.
That satisfied you.
Yeah, it made me feel good. There's just the idea that they were self-aware enough to at least have, gone through the self-scouting process and recognize that they haven't pulled the kind of drafts that they did early in John Schneider's tenure, where you're pulling all pros and potential Hall of Famers out of the draft, 2 years in a row.
Right.
Which, I don't know how many GMs get on that kind of roll throughout their career more than once. I mean, good luck with that. But just the idea that they're looking to improve through the draft in their process, and maybe putting an emphasis on different skill sets that they hadn't before, like have them play offensive line before we draft them to play offensive line. Little things like that, I think. I
feel like that's something that might come up in self-scouting, and
yes,
that you would identify as maybe not having worked so much to a degree in the past few years.
But look, it's not easy. It's not easy finding an offensive lineman, and apparently you can't just go out and just pluck one off of a tree somewhere.
Things are just not quite as clear as they used to be, and that's just my personal belief. There's not like a forest of offensive lineman trees out there that you can just run out in the backyard and go, just based on what's happened to college coaches right now too. They only have so much time with the players, and it's getting shorter for them. So, they have to be able to go out there and score 50, 60 points, right? And that's what you see when you go to these schools. It's what all of our scouts see. You don't see quite as much individual time anymore. It's more of like, just getting out there as a group, and it's not anybody's fault. I mean, it's just, it's like, 4 or 5 star guys that are coming out of college that would rather be known for sacking quarterbacks than protecting them. That's just the way it looks right now. The hope is that the trend turns a little bit and we see more of like old school football, if you will.
I just like the imagery it provides of an offensive lineman tree.
A forest of them. Right. Like I would love to find the forest of offensive lineman trees. Yeah, that'd be awesome. But that was one of the funnier quotes I've heard John Schneider say. That really cracked me up. The idea that there's not just a forest of offensive lineman trees that you can go and pick them right off there. But he does bring up the point of the other thing that he mentioned regarding the style of play in college and why there isn't just offensive linemen growing on trees is he mentioned the idea that it's more like basketball on grass in the college game rather than a smash mouth football kind of game, which he alluded to in the quote that you played. And the idea also in his mind was that those trends are cyclical to a degree, right? Where you go to, there was a time in the NFL where the run and shoot was all the rage. And then, the league being a copycat league, it, goes back and forth. And that's kind of what he's getting at with the college game, and the idea that maybe we'll see in the college game, people go back to more of a smash mouth pro style. And then you'd be able to find prospects that are more pro ready out of the college game. The other thing that he brought up was the idea that a lot of the more athletic guys, they want to go out and be famous for sacking the quarterback than protecting the quarterback. And I think that'll become cyclical too, because if you think about it, look at who got paid this offseason. Right?
You don't even have to be that good of an offensive lineman.
No, you just have to be a name that somebody recognizes as somebody who's played the position, and it's show me the money. And look, glory walks, but money talks, man. Like they're gonna when it becomes very evident that you have a stronger possibility to keep getting them checks playing offensive line, you'll see the shift to more guys going and playing offensive line.
Well, and a great example of that is how Garry Gilliam is now a millionaire for the first time in his life. And
he's getting them checks, Gary.
He's also,
shout out to Jalen Rose. I just got to say it because it's his. Yeah.
And Gilliam is now a member of the 49ers, and a big reason for that. Now, the Seahawks, they had the restricted free agent tag on Garry Gilliam. He was set to make $1.8 million if he were to sign his tender, which would have been right around this week. And but instead, the 49ers offered him more money. Not only that, they offered him guaranteed money at $1.4 million. So it makes sense for Garry Gilliam to say, oh, yeah, I'm going to go here for guaranteed money, and I could make more overall. And the Seahawks declined to match it. And because they had the lowest tender amount on them, they don't get anything. They just had that opportunity to match the 49ers offer of $2.2 million for one season. And John Schneider talked about the process the team went through in making that decision.
Pete and I talked about that there may be an opportunity for him. And we just felt like at this point in time, we didn't want to like drag it out for him. And so we just felt like it was in our best interest to just not match it and move forward at that position.
So let me ask you, Brandon, when this news came out that Garry Gilliam had defected to the 49ers, did your reaction was what? Was it, oh man, or was it meh, or was it all right? What was your reaction?
I was kind of meh because I would have rather see Gilliam go to another team that's not in the division, just because I don't want to have to root against him twice a year. But it's not like I was. This was a guy that at one point this year he got beat out by Bradley Sowell and was benched.
Right.
I'm not too worried about the Seahawks' ability to fill that roster spot. It was looking for him like he was likely going to be a backup behind Germain Ifedi at the right tackle spot. And so you aren't too concerned.
Yeah, I'm not worried at all.
Well, I think that does it for the big news from this last week. Not even big news, just a couple newsy items.
Right. Non-news that was news.
Right.
Yeah. Does this, in your opinion, the one thing I wanted to bring up about Gilliam, the last thing.
Okay.
Does this, in your opinion, change the way the Seahawks approach the draft regarding offensive linemen with Gilliam not being in the mix now to compete at right tackle?
I don't think so. And I think the reason why is, for the most part, they've addressed a lot of different positions on the offensive line. I do think they are going to take an offensive lineman, whether it's a guard or a tackle, but I don't think they're going to go necessarily crazy in the draft with regard to offensive linemen. And there's still potentially August once guys get into training camp and you see what other guys do with their drafts and what that means for veterans at their positions. And when cut down day comes around, I feel like the Seahawks have addressed who their main starters are going to be, with a couple guys competing for those starting 5 jobs. And now it's filling out the depth behind it.
Yeah, I think you're probably correct on that. I think the second they assigned Ibushi and Jokel and decided that they're going to kick Ifedi out to right tackle, I think the writing was clearly on the wall for Gilliam at that point. So, no, I don't think this changes their draft strategy really at all. And I agree with you completely on the idea that they're not going to go crazy in the draft. My prediction would be is they choose 2 offensive linemen throughout the course of the draft. So not even early per se. It could be late. And, you heard John Schneider talk a little bit about not having 4th and 5th round picks.
Yeah.
And how that was kind of a bummer. But then he was also like, well, we got 5 picks in the first 3 rounds. So that's pretty sweet. But overall, listening to him talk, I wouldn't be surprised if they end up trading down with some of that stuff and accumulating more picks. The one comment where he said, you look at the Browns draft board and you're like, wow, that'd be fun. He likes having a bevy of picks. So, but yeah, I think they'll end up taking 2 offensive linemen throughout the draft. And there's definitely other areas that I think he's more focused on when it comes to this year's draft.
Well, speaking of the draft, let's get to our talk with Rob Staton of SeahawksDraftBlog.com. Let's see if Rob can go 2 for 2 in 2 years at picking who the Seahawks are going to take first. Hey, before we go to that, I did want to note that ESPN's Sheil Kapadia reported that Dion Jordan, his contract, $640,000 with a $25,000 workout bonus.
Yeah, so chump change.
Chump change for Dion Jordan.
Yep, worth the risk.
With the 31st pick in the 2016 NFL Draft, the Seattle Seahawks select Germain Ifedi, tackle, Texas A&M. That concludes the first round of the 2016 NFL Draft. Thank you all for being here on the draft. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow night at 6 o'clock local time. Good night, everybody.
And we welcome back Rob Staton of SeahawksDraftBlog.com, also co-host of the 3000 NFL Mock Draft podcast. Last year, Rob correctly nailed the Seahawks' first-round draft pick, Germain Ifedi. We brought him back this year with just days leading up to the draft to see if he can do it again. Rob, how you doing?
I'm good, and thanks for having me on again. I must admit, I'm looking forward to sort of seeing what the Seahawks are going to do. It's quite a long process, and there was a little bit of window dressing, I think you could say, in free agency, and they've clearly put a lot of focus on the draft in helping them get to a position where they can be really competitive again next year. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do.
What's really stood out to you through free agency, Rob? Is there any position now where the Seahawks really have a really strong need that makes you think, oh, they're going to go linebacker in the first round, or going to go corner or defensive line? Is there any position that stands out as one of particular need now based on the positions they've addressed in free agency?
Well, you could certainly make a case for they need a little bit more at cornerback. They could do with further competition on the offensive line. And I think the pass rush is an area that, certainly needs to be addressed. But the one thing they kind of have done is they've added players at a number of different positions. So they brought in a lot of linebackers. So if they don't get a linebacker, then they might feel comfortable with the depth they've got now. They wanted to do that. They brought in Bradley McDougall. So, they have at least a backup safety, maybe a potential starting big nickel as well. They brought in 2 free agent offensive linemen, so that to an extent they've added some experience to that. And they brought in a running back as well, in Eddie Lacy. So, that's a number of different positions they've addressed there. I guess if you were to pinpoint one area they haven't added anybody, it's the defensive line. And maybe that is going to be a hint as to what they're going to do here, because they've lost Demontre Moore. They didn't re-sign John Jenkins. They have some needs in terms of an interior rusher, I think, and maybe another sort of bigger guy in there to add to the rotation. And maybe they will continue to look at the edge rush as well.
Yeah, getting interior pass rushers is always kind of the struggle, to really find guys who are really strong at that. And to me, it doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of guys in the draft that, really talented interior pass rushers. Does anybody stand out to you?
I think the guys that stand out are going to go very early. So Solomon Thomas is a really, really good player. He's definitely going to go, I would say, within the top 3 picks. I think he's going to be long gone. And then you're going to see Jonathan Allen go pretty quickly as well. They're really the main 2 guys who can play more inside out. You may convert them to 3 technique down the line, but I think that they're more likely going to be sort of these inside out, Michael Bennett style pass rushers. Apart from that, it is pretty weak. I mean, you could make arguments for people like, oh, look, Malik McDowell has got this great physical profile and has got great length and has got great quickness. But there are attitude and character and work ethic concerns which don't exactly strike you as the kind of thing the Seahawks are going to be interested in. There are other players as well. I know that a lot of people like Chris Wormley, but you kind of watch him on tape and you think, yeah, do you know what? There's some things to like about him, but is he particularly exciting? Is he the type of player at the next level who is going to be, like a 6 to 8 sack guy? I'm not convinced that he's that. And as you run down the list, DeMarcus Walker's kind of a forgotten man of this draft class, and he might be somebody that they consider in that kind of round 3 range if he's still there, maybe even round 2. But there's not a great deal of options there. And I think if you want to get a pass rusher in this draft class, you're going to have to do it early. I was speaking to Tony Pauline earlier today, and he said there's going to be a rush on defensive linemen in the mid-first round. That may sort of impact what the Seahawks do, because if you want a pass rusher in this draft, I think you're going to have to take him pretty early.
Now, you brought up Jonathan Allen, and you just have an article that you wrote just yesterday on SeahawksDraftBlog.com, taking a look at one possible trade-up scenario for the Seahawks. Now, the Seahawks, one thing that this team has not done in the John Schneider era is trade up to go get a guy that they really like early in the first round. So if the team's going to keep us on our toes as fans, then maybe this is the year. If they do trade up, is Jonathan Allen the guy that they would really look to do that for? Because, like you mentioned, the scarcity of those interior pass rushers.
It's pretty much the only thing they haven't done so far, which is trade up in the first round. They've done everything else. They've traded up for players like Tyler Lockett in the past. They've traded first round picks for big name veterans. They've traded down and out of the first round. The one thing they haven't done is trade up. Now, the thing with Jonathan Allen is, I think it's highly likely that he's going to go in the top 10. He may sort of see his floor as number 11 to New Orleans, number 12 to Cleveland. The only way that he gets beyond that is because of health concerns. And if teams scare themselves a little bit, I think if news of his shoulder issue had come out today, for example, it might have been something that really spooked teams. I think because it came out during the combine, they probably spent the last 6 weeks looking into this and may have satisfied themselves that he's going to be okay. That this is an issue that's going to affect him when he's 50 and not when he's 27. So I don't think there's much chance of him dropping, but I think if he did and he got into sort of that 14, 15 range, then yes, it is highly unlikely the Seahawks will trade up, but that is the only real scenario I can imagine where they would do it. To go up and get a defensive lineman that they really like, maybe surrender one of those third-round picks. They've got 3 of them. Maybe consider something involving number 58. But even then, I think it's more likely they will trade down again this year and then maybe trade up from 58. So do what they did last year, which was trade down and then trade up and pick twice in the top 45 or 50, then maybe trade up to try and get into the top 20.
Considering that scenario, I mean, I think that does make sense based on a lot of the things that we've heard from John Schneider, just based on their history and having, compiling those types of picks, because there's so many guys in this draft that I think about at the bottom of the first round that I really like. So getting a couple picks early in the second round just makes sense to me. There's one guy that Adam and I talked about last week that we really didn't have a chance to take a look at his tape, and a guy that would probably be one of those guys that the Seahawks might look at in that range, and that's Ahkello Witherspoon. What have you seen about Witherspoon that you like?
Okay, so the things to like about Witherspoon is he is incredibly athletic, had a superb combine, ticks all of the boxes in terms of what the Seahawks look for in an athlete. So, great broad jump, great vertical, really good 40-yard dash. His short shuttle was really good. So the complete package in terms of an athlete. And then when you watch him on the tape, you want to see him against the best competition. So you immediately go and see, okay, who did he play last year? Right, he played Washington. Let's see him if he covered John Ross. He did. Let's watch him against John Ross. And he did a fantastic job covering John Ross. I mean, he was superb. Possibly the best job covering John Ross that I saw in 2016. When you look at that, you can't help but be impressed. I mean, he finds a way to get a hand on the ball. He was the second most productive defensive back in the country last year at pass breakups. The guy who was number 1 was Tedrick Thompson, the safety at Colorado. Number 2 was Ahkello Witherspoon. So he impacted games. He impacted plays. He covered really well. There's one other thing to think about is the wingspan. And I know we spend a lot of time focusing on 32-inch arms. That's a narrative now that has stuck for a while with the Seahawks, that they only draft cornerbacks with 32-inch arms, and Witherspoon has that. But another thing that maybe people don't realize is that they also look at wingspan, which is a better gauge of length. And they haven't drafted any cornerbacks that have got a less than a 77.5-inch wingspan. In the Pete Carroll era, they've consistently gone with that, and that is extreme length. That's not 32-inch arms. There's quite a few players in this draft class who are 32 inches in the arm length, but have a pretty average wingspan. Witherspoon is one of only 6 cornerbacks that I can find that have got a wingspan that matches up to what the Seahawks look for. The other one who's touted to go early is Kevin King, and there's a handful of guys that may be available on day 3 that they might look at. So it might come down to Witherspoon, who they've met with, and Kevin King, who I think might be off the board by 26. The problem with Witherspoon, and this is a big problem in terms of the Seahawks, is that he seems to be allergic to contact. And when anybody sort of attacks his side of the field, whether it's a running back who will take a pitch and then run out wide, whether it's a wide receiver screen, he very rarely makes the tackle. And in fact, there are examples where he almost moves away from the ball carrier because he doesn't want to make contact. And if he's going to last in the Seahawks scheme, he's going to have to be much better in run support. And I suspect one of the main things they did when they met with Witherspoon, I think it was last week, will have been to sort of test his character and see if there's a bit of dog in him there, so that when he gets to the NFL level, he can be a lot more physical defending the run and defending those wide receiver screens. Because if not, this is what's going to happen in a game. They're going to toss the ball out to the running back, and he's going to run Witherspoon's side, and they're going to get big plays every time. They're going to throw wide receiver screens his side. He's going to get blocked out of it, and he's going to give up big plays. So that's something that he really needs to work on.
Let's talk pass rushers, because there's one guy that I seem to remember consistently being kind of in the top 15 of mock drafts. And then there's some lately that I haven't really even seen him in the first round lately, and that's Derek Barnett. Any thoughts or comments on him, the pass rusher out of Tennessee?
Well, he was a really fun player to watch at Tennessee, and you could often watch him, especially last season, where he would just take over a game. And I think the Georgia game was a good example of that. The Texas A&M game, it was a terrific game to watch, and he had a big impact in that one. And he was kind of the heart and soul of the Tennessee team. Incredibly productive. He had 33 sacks in 3 seasons starting. Huge numbers for tackle for a loss. And he's young. I mean, he's 20 years old. His best play may be ahead of him, but there's certain things to be a little bit concerned about as well. And look, you don't want to focus too much on traits and athleticism and length and stuff like that, because there's always an exception to the rule, and that could be Derek Barnett. But the whole point of looking for players who are not exceptions is that you want to give yourselves the best possible opportunity to draft a great player, not hope that they're going to be the exception. And when you look at Derek Barnett, he's got short arms, 32-inch arms, very short for an edge rusher. It means that offensive tackles will get into his frame very early. He's not going to have the length to get away from the block, and he's not going to have as much success as a consequence of that. He's going to have to find a way to work around that. His wingspan is as low as some of the smaller cornerbacks in this draft. I mean, it's not good at all. And then you look at the way that he competed athletically, ran a 4.9 at the combine, a 1.69 split, which is as good as, I think Jonathan Allen ran better than that, and he's nearly 300 pounds. There are things to like about Derek Barnett, but you have to kind of look at the whole package and say, love the production, love the character, love what he would bring to a defense. But there aren't many great defensive ends who look like him in the league. There are some. I mean, he could be Elvis Dumerville or somebody like that. Entirely possible. But there aren't many like him. So are you prepared to roll the dice when maybe you could look at someone like Taco Charlton in a similar range, Charles Harris in a similar range, who might be equally good in terms of being a prospect, but might give you a better chance of getting a good player?
I think it would be important for the Seahawks to get Taco Charlton, because then I think we have accumulated all the tacos that have made it into the NFL.
What was the other taco?
There was the wide receiver. There's not a whole Taco Wallace. That's the guy, Taco Wallace.
Oh yeah, the famous Taco Wallace. Everybody.
Yeah, these guys, taco guys, don't come around very often.
No. Well, to shift gears just a little bit, Rob. I mean, you basically are in the business of prognostication when it comes to the draft, and I mean, I know you do the NFL mock draft or the Seahawks mock draft podcast and all that stuff. So, my question is, how many mock drafts is too many mock drafts? Like, where's the sweet spot? Like, I mean, is it like with 3 mock drafts? Is it like 12? Because, I'm like looking on here and there's like mock draft like 49 now and like things like that. Like, how many times can you go through the exercise and really learn something?
I'm glad you asked, because this is kind of like my favorite subject at the moment. You know what? When I started writing the draft blog, you would probably have about 5 mock drafts. So it would be a real small hat. So someone like Rob Rank would do a mock draft, and you would see Mel Kiper do a mock draft, and there'd be like a couple of other, national pundits. And then you would have, a handful of blogs who would do it as well. We've kind of progressed to a point now where clicks and the internet is so important, much more so than publications and newspapers and magazines. So everybody has to have a mock draft now because they're good for clicks. So if you are a beat writer, you better do a mock draft so that everybody will click on that link and probably scroll straight down to the pick they want to see, disagree with it, and then click straight off. But it's a click. So, that's what you're after. And everybody is doing them. Everybody has to have a mock draft. And eventually, and listen, I'm as bad as anybody. If I see on my Twitter timeline, someone's posted, here's my mock draft, I'm clicking on it. It's like a drug. You have to click on it. You look through it. You go, okay, that was pretty much exactly the same as the last one I looked at. And then you click off. But it's just a thing. It's like we have this need to read every single mock draft, to disagree with every single one. And there's too much. I think I've done, on the blog, I've done 1 mock draft in the last 6 weeks, because I just thought I was getting tired of it, and I wanted to do other things. I didn't want people just to come on the blog and sort of see, who I would much rather say, hey, the Seahawks might draft this guy. Here's a reason. Here's a list of reasons why. Here's a list of reasons why it might not happen. You decide, let's talk about this. I think that's, personally, I thought that was a better thing for us to do these last few weeks than just do a different mock draft every week. I'm going to do one this week for the Huddle Report rankings thing. But I think we've got to a point where there's too many. And the other little thing is, every single mock draft seems to be called, like, the first mock draft has to be mock draft 1.0. And then the second one is 2.0. And the third, why can't it just be mock draft 1? Right. Where's the 0.0? I mean, are they coming back and like update? Is it like when your iTunes thing or your right. Apple phone needs an update? We've got an update here of 1.1. I mean, they don't update these things. They just jump straight to 2.0. So it's not an iCloud update. It's a mock draft. Why does it have to have an Apple number next to it?
Well, I think they're just doing the number wrong. I mean, let's say they the second time that they did their mock draft that they changed one pick in the second round, and what would that be? Like maybe pick number 38, right? So then it should be mock draft 2.2.38. And that way, just the one pick that they changed, in that 1 week to get your click.
Yeah, I think that wouldn't be confusing at all. That would definitely be the bet. I look forward to seeing mock 32.697 next year, which will have the Seahawks trading out of the first round. Yeah,
what could go wrong? This will be great. This is a great trend.
Hey, Rob, there's two guys I wanted to ask you about because in the news these last couple days, Reuben Foster, linebacker from Alabama, and Jabril Peppers from Michigan they've been in the news for failing a drug test for apparently drinking too much water, which I guess
that's a PED, Brandon. This is serious stuff.
I guess it's a way to mask PED use.
Yeah.
And that's why they failed. What are your thoughts on these guys? And is it going to make it so these guys, either of these guys would be available for the Seahawks potentially?
Well, just to let you know, guys, I had a bottle of PEDs before we started this little podcast here, just to refresh me before talking to you. But
I actually encourage you, Rob, to be on PEDs before coming on the show because all the enhancement, it can't hurt.
Well, the thing is the whole that you drink a lot of water. I've seen sort of people trying to break this down and saying, if you're feeling poorly, you would take in a lot of fluid because you're trying to flush it out of your system. And there was many reports during the combine this year that certain players had got ill. Derek Barnett, who you just talked about, was one of those. Nearly didn't work out because he fell ill, and there seemed to be something going around in the hotel where the players were staying, and a lot of them caught this illness. So it's not a big surprise that a lot of them were taking on a lot of fluids, and that situations like this have happened. But then people have argued, well, you know what? If you're taking PEDs, you also take a lot of fluid in because that's the other way to try so it doesn't show up on the test. So we don't know either way whether Reuben Foster or Jabril Peppers have actually done any cheating here, or whether it's just one of those things. And we have to wait for more information. But I think you have to judge players on what is their reputation, what is their background. So for someone like Reuben Foster, you're saying we had concern about the injury, we had concern about the thing that happened at the hospital during the combine. I've seen people suggesting that some of the company he keeps is not the best, that there may be some character issues there because of that. Now you see this report coming out, and eventually, when is enough, on a player that you start to move him down the boards. But someone like Jabril Peppers, I think, in fairness to him, everything's been positive for the last few weeks. He was incredibly engaging at the combine. He was kind of like the star personality of the combine, lit the place up while he was there. I think that teams will look at not just the way he worked out, but his character, that he's got an incredibly gritty background as well. Teams are going to love his backstory. And when they see this, they might be willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. They will do a little bit of research, but they may give him the benefit of the doubt. For Reuben Foster, they might say, what's going to happen next? Is anything else going to happen before the draft? Because it just seems like every single week there's a new story about this guy.
Which one of these guys would most likely become Seahawks between the two?
I'm not convinced either will. And the reasons for that is because Reuben Foster is an inside linebacker, and I know that they talked about having depth there, but I think taking another inside linebacker who's going to back up Bobby Wagner or maybe play the will instead of KJ Wright is highly unlikely. And the situation with Peppers is, for me, I think he's a strong safety only, and I think that some people believe that he can maybe play as a big nickel, and I think that's a role that the Seahawks could look at for this draft. If not in the first round, then in the first 3 rounds. A bit of competition there, someone who can compete with McDougald or at least be a backup safety. I think that's something they could look at. But when you look at Peppers, he's not particularly great working in space or in coverage. And if you want him to play that role, he has to be able to, in sort of a 4-2-5, you have to be able to drop deep and play cover 2 as a free safety, and you have to be able to play up in the box, cover the slot, cover tight ends. That's not really a role that suits him. I think he's an attack dog, strong safety, someone that you play at the line of scrimmage. You say, look, get after the ball, carry, get out, play essentially like Cam Chancellor has played for the Seahawks, and it takes some of the coverage pressure off a player in that situation. So for me, he's a strong safety. I think his best fit might be at somewhere like Dallas. They really need a strong safety. They're picking at number 28. That could be the kind of range where he goes. I could see him going to Miami playing a similar role. I could see him going to Washington and playing a similar role. But I think the Seahawks will probably, if they're going to take that type of player, will look for a little bit more athleticism.
Well, Rob, we've spent a lot of time talking about guys on defense, and one of the biggest needs for the Seahawks is on the offensive line, particularly at tackles. There's not a lot of tackles to really get excited about in the draft, apart from maybe Garrett Bowles. I know a lot of people are excited about Cam Robinson. Is there any potential that they take a tackle in the first round?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a chance that it could happen. The problem with this draft class is that there are so few of them. So there's a very high possibility that the players that we've talked about, Cam Robinson, Ryan Ramczyk, Forrest Lamp, Garrett Bowles, will not be there at 26. If they are, then there's a decent possibility that any of them could be Seattle's pick. I mean, they could use another tackle. They could use even another interior guy, somebody who can maybe play. That it's a possibility for sure. I mean, it should be considered, but there just aren't that many guys out there. And if one of them falls, they should be in consideration. Personally, I'm a big fan of Garrett Bowles. Speaking to certain different people, there's a feeling that maybe he will struggle to pick up a complex blocking scheme. Which is not the best news if you want him to come and play the ZBS. The zone blocking scheme is pretty difficult to pick up, and the Seahawks don't need any more rookie issues and youth on the line struggling picking it up. So that might mean that they don't consider him. But, there's other players there who they might think, hey, look, Cam Robinson, huge, big, powerful. We can put him at left guard. We can put him at tackle. We can put him at right guard, whatever. Forrest Lamp can play, many different positions. Ryan Ramczyk, maybe a bit more polished than Garrett Bowles. And if he's there, we can plug him in at left or right tackle. So, yeah, I think there's still a chance that, they could go O-line in the first round, but it really depends who's there.
I think the time has come. Now, last year you came on the show. You said the Seahawks would take with their number one pick, take Germain Ifedi. That came through. So you're 1 for 1 in the past year. Are you going to be able to make the streak 2 straight years and be able to actually select who the team ends up picking with their first pick, whether or not they trade out of it? Like they traded out last year and they still took Germain Ifedi. Do you have the target in mind that the Seahawks are going to take first?
I think this is a lot harder this year, just because I think there are more positions that the Seahawks could go for. And I also think they've done a more thorough job in terms of filling players in to fill needs and then not leaving anything that's blindingly obvious, like offensive line was a year ago. They have signed a couple of offensive linemen. They've signed a safety. They've signed a running back, etc. Linebackers. So it's going to be a little bit harder to project. I think if I was going to have a guess, I think maybe defensive line is going to be the way they go early, just because they haven't done anything there. That is the one area that they've not done anything. They want a pass rusher. Pete Carroll's admitted that. And I think if you're going to take one, it has to be early. So the names that I'm kind of thinking at the moment are potentially Taco Charlton, getting the second taco of the NFL to Seattle. Potentially Charles Harris, maybe Tim Williams, maybe a wild card. And here's a couple of names for you to sort of chew on a little bit. The Seahawks like uniqueness in a player. And while there's nothing particularly unique about the 40-yard dash run by TJ Watt or Tyus Bowser, they both ran elite 1.5 10-yard splits. They were both sensational in the short area quickness drills, in particular Watt in the short shuttle, which is something the Seahawks pay a lot of attention to, and they were incredibly explosive. They are pretty unique. I did an article recently about how they compare physically to Khalil Mack. And that's not to say they're going to be Khalil Mack at the next level, but it's to say, here's Khalil Mack's physical profile. Here are these two guys. They're the same. Now, so you could at least say physically, they're very, very similar. And I just wonder whether or not the Seahawks might trade down first and take one of TJ Watt or Tyus Bowser. That might be a direction they go if the likes of Taco Charlton are not there. Because I think just the way that this is going, it is maybe drifting towards pass rusher early. So, if I'm going to give you those two names and sort of say, listen, I could be very predictable and say Obi Melifonwu, someone who's an incredible athlete at safety. I don't know if he's going to be there at 26. If he is, it could be Melifonwu. I could give you Garrett Bowles' name or one of these other defensive backs like Chidobe Awuzie. But if we're going to be a little bit, if we're going to go for it, if we're going to take a little risk here and say, give us an out of the box type of name, then maybe trade down from 26 and then take one of those two guys, TJ Watt or Tyus Bowser. Maybe that might be what they do.
All right. Well, just to see, Rob, now, and you can give your final mock draft of the Seahawks on any other shows that you do, but I want you to pick one guy just to see if there's some kind of magic that we have with each other, you coming on the show and to be able to go 2 for 2, just one guy.
You just want there to be magic between you and Rob. That's really what it is.
That's part of it.
Well, if this magic works, then maybe we should pick the lottery numbers this week or something as well. I will. Let me just mention another name as well. I think Quincy Wilson is a guy to watch out for because he's incredibly competitive and physical, and he's built like a safety, but he plays corner, and his short shuttle was so good that they might even try him inside as kind of like a big nickel, and he is very Seahawky in terms of the style of play. So there's another name to watch out for. I mean, this is you want me to mention a name? Okay, so I'll say they trade down into the early 30s and they select TJ Watt. Let's go for that. And you know what? It might be wrong. It could be very wrong. I could be very wrong on this one, but let's just see if the magic works.
I like it.
Lock it up. Rob says it. TJ Watt. That's what's happening.
One more question before you go. And I want people to go to SeahawksDraftBlog.com, Rob, because there's so much good stuff to read while you're there. But one thing I have to ask you, of the Seahawks rivals, 49ers, Rams, Cardinals, are there guys that you, when another team comes up to pick that's a rival of the Seahawks, are there any players that you're rooting that they pick, like that have like extreme, bust potential, or that they just go crazy off the board with their pick? Are you a fan in that way?
No, I mean, I have to say, as much as I want the Seahawks to pummel all of those teams when they play them during the regular season, during the draft, I can honestly say I've never sat there and thought, oh no, who they're going to take? Oh, they've taken this guy. I'm really jealous. So I've never really had that feeling. I mean, I personally hope that Arizona take Deshaun Kaiser in the first round, because I think that he is a major project and really erratic, and there is some physical talent there to work with. But I think that he would be. It would take a long time for Arizona to get him to a position where he could be really dangerous, and it might not happen. So that is the kind of thing that would get a thumbs up from me, I think, for Arizona. In terms of San Francisco, they are really at the bottom of the pile right now. They're in a major rebuild. I kind of liked some of the moves they made in free agency, and they had to do something. But that number 2 pick is a difficult one this year, because there's no sort of there's not a couple of quarterbacks that you could really go in that direction. There's not, they might end up taking Leonard Fournette, who I really like, but then, are you building around a running back? It's not what many teams do these days. If you take Solomon Thomas, it's another defensive lineman. You took 2 the last 2 years. So they're in a bit of a difficult position. So I think that I actually think it'd be quite good if the San Francisco 49ers took a quarterback early as well, because there'd be a lot of pressure on that guy to start. And that could get quite ugly as well, because they don't have the support system to manage a rookie quarterback. So the Rams don't pick until round 2, so they're going to find it very difficult to sort of have an impact draft.
This is the problem that I have, because I want to root against those teams on draft day, but I don't know enough about what players that they should not take. And so I'm glad I at least have a couple guys that I can root for other teams to pick.
All you need to know, Brandon, is if they end up putting on red of any kind, whether that's Niner red or a Cardinals red, they're going to suck. I hate them already. Yeah.
That's right. All right, Rob. Well, really want to thank you for coming back on once again and helping out the show this off season. And maybe we'll have you back once again when we know what players we actually have on this Seahawks team. Really exciting that next week we're going to know.
We're going to know next week. Anytime, guys. Anytime you want to talk Seahawks in the draft, just let me know.
Thanks again, Rob. And check out SeahawksDraftBlog.com. Follow Rob on Twitter at Rob Staton. And be sure to tune in to check out 3000 NFL Mock Draft wherever you get your podcasts. Always great to have Rob Staton on the show. If nothing else, you need to go to SeahawksDraftBlog.com just to check out the article that he wrote about trading up to get Jonathan Allen. And the reason why you need to check that out is there's a video of Coach Carroll checking out Allen in a way that one might describe as creepy. But
I think I've seen this video.
Yeah.
That did not come across as weird to me at all.
You don't think so?
Yeah, nope, not bad. I take nothing out of that. Okay. I don't think that wasn't even a full checkout. That was like a quarter checkout.
Yeah.
That was like if, say, you were a creepy old grandpa, like checking out some hot chick, like at the store, right? And your wife standing next to you. That would be the most that you could check her out. Is like that quarter checkout. He had no such pressure. So like he could have given him a full checkout, but did not.
I see.
Yeah. It was more like a side eye checkout. That's my analysis of the 6-second gif of Pete Carroll looking at Jonathan Allen.
All right. Well, let's do some analysis of what Rob actually thought of the Seahawks' first pick. Now,
okay.
I know that he wanted to say Obi Melifonwu, but I think based off of other analysts now are thinking that the Seahawks might take Obi Melifonwu or Kevin King, like Rob had predicted the last time we had him on. I think now he's overthinking it, and that's why he went with Watt.
You know, that's why I asked him, like, how many mock drafts until you've got like your mock draft, right? Like, right. How many .0s do you need? You know, and yeah, I think he kind of hit it on the head with that. I mean, it's definitely lesser than more. And, you know, as you come up to the actual draft day and you've got so many names, you know, spinning through your head. Yeah, I think he's probably overanalyzed it a little bit. But, you know, the other thing that I wonder about is, does everybody else value these defensive backs as much as, I guess, the hype wagon becomes so high on, say, like Kevin King or Obi or any of those guys that you're over anticipating where they're going to go in the draft, that they're going to go higher than they actually will. And they might actually still be there when the Seahawks pick at 26 or 31 once they trade down.
Well, here's the cool thing about the draft is that none of these mock drafts are going to accurately predict what actually happens.
Well, shut your dirty mouth. Like every one of them is solid, founded journalism. How can you say such blasphemy that none of them will get it right?
I do like Watt, though, and I would be super happy if the Seahawks ended up with him.
Yeah. I mean, I saw one headline that he's the most athletic Watt. I don't know exactly what that means, but yeah, I mean, that's one of those where you get sucked into the name a little bit, I wonder.
Well, yeah.
You know? Yeah. Well, I try not to get sucked into the name,
okay.
You know? Yeah.
But, just think about the possibilities when J.J. Watt's at the end of his current contract and his brother's here. He's going to be like, what would be cool is to play in the NFL with my brother. Yeah,
when his back is wrecked and he can't play anymore.
That's okay.
No thanks. Yeah.
Jerry Rice retired as a Seahawk. Franco Harris retired as a Seahawk.
I am done with bringing in the future Hall of Famer on the last year. Like, no, I'm over that.
It hasn't happened in a while.
I know. That's what I'm saying. Like,
T.O. almost happened.
Like, I can legitimately say that I'm over that behavior.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't root for another Franco Harris.
Well, let's get into some of these other draft picks, Adam. And let's start off with quarterbacks because there was one player that the Seahawks brought in for an official visit that was a little bit interesting to me and maybe a little unexpected. And that's when they brought in Davis Webb, quarterback from California. And he's considered to be a second-round prospect, but you start to hear his name being mentioned as potentially one of those guys that could go at the end of the first round.
Wow, really? He's getting rumored there?
Again, it's a mock draft. It doesn't mean it's going to happen.
All right. I looked at a little bit of his stuff, and I think the first thing that jumped out to me was his delivery and the way that he throws the ball. And what's funny is that I think that's what popped out to you, like, right away.
It caught me off guard looking at his delivery because after watching so much other college football, it looked...
And watching a bunch of crappy, long, elongated... terrible throwing motions, like seeing a compact pro-ready sort of throwing motion threw you off.
It looked funky to me.
Yeah, I mean,
it wasn't just the fact that he had such a compact throwing motion, but also throws off his back foot a lot.
Well, okay, now that's a whole another can of worms that you can get into with him. Yeah, he throws off his back foot a ton, and that'll get you killed in the NFL. Now, the other thing is he doesn't throw a pretty ball. I mean, it's kind of like when somebody made fun of Peyton Manning once. They're like, man, you throw a lot of ducks. And he's like, yeah, I throw a lot of ducks for touchdowns.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so maybe he could throw a lot of ducks for touchdowns, but man, he doesn't spin it. Let's put it that way.
Right.
But, and the other thing about his throwing motion to me, when it comes just to where we're talking about arm slot and things like that, it is compact and a quick release, but it's low. For a guy who's 6'5", I don't think he plays at that 6'5" the way that he releases the ball. You know how Russell releases it super high.
Super high, yeah.
Yeah, but Davis, it's very low. It is over the top still. It's not like a sidearm release or anything like that, but it's fairly low. He's probably a top 3 quarterback out of these quarterbacks in this draft.
Really? You put him in the top 3?
Well, hell, there's nobody to put in the top 3, man. Like, I mean,
Deshaun Watson would be. Are you ready to break
down? Are you ready to break down my idea on the quarterbacks list? Or are we going to hold that off?
No, I'm ready for it. Bring it. Although, before we get into that, did you see Davis Webb's pooch punt against San Diego?
No, I missed his.
Because that was cool.
Yeah. Well, doesn't Watson do those things?
I don't know. I've never seen it.
I thought he did. I don't really give a crap if my quarterback can punt or not. Look, looking at this draft class, the idea that there's not a lot of good quarterbacks in this draft class, they're not far off on that. The draft analysis guys. I mean, there's a ton of names that I'll just cross off for you right quick. And I'll start with some of the names that maybe you hadn't heard with that I looked at. Brad Kaya out of Miami. Can't play. There's no way. That dude's a college quarterback through and through. I saw an article headlined, "Is Joshua Dobbs the next Dak Prescott?" Hell no. You obviously didn't watch anything that he did. Look, Dak Prescott looked like a real quarterback that everybody said, well, he plays in the Tebow offense, so he must not be a great thrower of the football. But if you actually watch him throw the football, he had good anticipation and accuracy, which is what I said last year before he was even drafted. Joshua Dobbs is not that guy at all. That dude is a runner who can kind of throw it a little bit. You talk about bad throwing motions. There you go. Here are the top tier guys that in order on CBS sports.com, where they have them rated. Mitchell Trubisky, however you say his name, from North Carolina. Yeah. One year as a starter. If I were to rank all the QBs out as, who would be the number one QB off the board, he would be my guy. Yeah. I would agree with them on that.
Now, if you had the Browns' number 1 pick, would you take a quarterback like Mitch Trubisky, or would you take Myles Garrett?
I would definitely take Mitch.
Really? Oh.
Well, for a couple reasons. Number one, quarterback is the most important position in the game easily. Secondly, the things you're starting to hear about Myles Garrett and as far as his work ethic and things like that scares the catfish out of me, man. Like, the thing with Trubisky is he looks a lot like Carson Wentz did to me. Where like you can see the pro tools, like he's fairly mobile, he's got a big arm, he's fairly accurate. You can see all that, but he made some boneheaded throws in with decision making, things like that, due to inexperience, and that's kind of what you saw with Carson Wentz. And I think he could be a Carson Wentz type of player. He's got all of the tools. He's big enough to do all of that. I agree with him being your number 1 out of these quarterbacks. Is he a surefire slam dunk? No. But if you're the Browns...
Yeah, Carson Wentz wasn't either.
No, but if you're the Browns, what the hell do you have to lose?
Okay, so you're allowing the consensus number 1 overall pick to fall to the 49ers. Now, do the 49ers take Myles Garrett, or do they take your number 2 quarterback off the board?
Well, I don't think anybody's taking my number two quarterback off the board in the first round, because my number 2 quarterback off the board is Nathan Peterman from Pitt. And a lot of people will be like, who the hell is that guy? Look, if you go back and you watch Nathan Peterman play, he's got the physical attributes of Blake Bortles, but he can take all of the boneheaded plays out of it. He's super accurate. He's got a great delivery. He's mechanically sound. He's fairly mobile. He's a great leader. Guy who's I believe he's a 5th-year senior coming out.
Yeah, he is.
And when people say who's the next Dak Prescott in this draft, The guy that I think who could have real success right out of the gate, if you had to plug him in, say if your starting quarterback broke his back in the preseason game against the Seahawks, would be Nathan Peterman. I think he's the most pro-ready guy out of all of these guys.
And he's a guy that's projected to go in the 4th round. Now, right? With the Seahawks having brought in Davis Webb and maybe looking for a quarterback to compete, considering, what's gone on with T-Boyk in the offseason, do you bring in Nathan Peterman with one of your 3rd-round picks?
Maybe. I think that the idea of them taking a quarterback in this draft isn't far-fetched. You heard him talk about today. He was asked, Schneider, if comparing you to your former proteges, whether that's Ron Wolf in Green Bay or some of the others, they always were drafting quarterbacks and you haven't seemed to. Like, what's the deal? And he's like, yeah, it hasn't really worked out, but I've always believed in the idea of having one in the chamber. And the idea that they could find a quarterback in the draft, that doesn't shock me. Like, they could do that. Sure. Nathan Peterman would be my number 2 guy. My number 3 guy, I guess, is Deshaun Watson.
Okay.
Either him or Davis Webb. I don't know. Look, the thing about Deshaun Watson, he's definitely a winner, no doubt. He's electric and a playmaker and all that. But man, his decision-making stinks. It's really not that great. And especially considering that a lot of the success that he had was with Mike Williams, the receiver. That dude's a freaking baller, man.
He can pretty much catch anything you throw in his general direction.
So I like Deshaun Watson. I mean, if you're picking out of these guys, sure, I'd bring him in. I wouldn't spend anything early on him. He might be able to develop, but I think you've kind of seen his ceiling to a degree. His accuracy is not great. That's my biggest concern with him. Then maybe Davis Webb at that point. We talked about him just a little bit earlier, so you kind of have an idea of my thoughts on him. Kind of a project sort of guy. Let's talk about some guys that can't play. All right.
Well, I think Rob mentioned one of them, and that's Patrick Mahomes, who we'd like to see go to the Cardinals.
Well, and he also mentioned Deshaun Kaiser. So
he didn't say Patrick Mahomes couldn't play, though.
He can't play, man. Dude, that guy, if you draft that guy, you are dumb as catfish. You are dumb. Look, man, I get it. He's got a huge arm. He threw for a gajillion yards in that Red Raiders offense and all that. I get that Davis Webb transferred, away from Texas Tech and Mahomes started in his stead. I get all that, man. That dude, his mechanics are awful. They are so bad. Look, he is the next incarnation of Jay Cutler. He's a total chucker. He's a gigantic chucker, and you'll never, ever talk him out of that, man. He'll get eaten alive in the pros. He makes an excellent New York Jet. He's gonna be a great New York Jet. That's exactly who that guy is.
He's not even gonna make it to the Cardinals.
No, he'll get picked way too early for no reason. The other guy, Deshaun Kaiser out of Notre Dame. I think you had some fun quotes that you attributed to Deshaun Kaiser. What do you have those on hand, Brandon?
It's one thing to have goals, and it's another thing to think highly of yourself, to yourself, internalize it. And it's a completely different thing.
You can talk a little too. Yeah. But
it's completely different when you come out and say, I'm Tom Brady in Cam Newton's body.
Right. That if he worked on his skills, he's not there yet, but he feels like he could be that player.
Yeah. No one else can do what I can do. And I've truly figured out in this process, if I can maximize all my potential in every aspect of this game, this is bold. I have the ability to be the greatest quarterback to ever play. Imagine taking Brady's intellect and Brady's preparation and putting it on a guy with Cam Newton's body. Why can't I be the greatest? The only thing stopping me from it is me. That's what's driving me now.
That is quite the quote there. Look, if I had any advice for Deshaun Kaiser, it would be give Terrell Pryor a call.
Yeah.
Because you're a wide receiver. Like go give Terrell Pryor a call and find out what it takes to turn yourself into an NFL wide receiver. Because man, you're not an NFL quarterback. He is super inaccurate. He throws the seam really well. He can throw that. Everything else is a crapshoot, man. That dude is an athlete that could sort of chuck it around a little bit. I mean, if the Cardinals drafted Deshaun Kaiser or Patrick Mahomes, I'm doing dances, man. I'm doing dances. Congratulations on your wonderful pick for the future. That's going to be awesome for you. I'd be super stoked for that. So, I guess the only other guy to talk about to me would be Chad Kelly from Ole Miss, Swag, which is basically his nickname. Apparently, Captain Swag here, he likes to Instagram, people like Mia Khalifa, whatever her name is, the porn actress.
What?
He didn't even get invited to the combine because all of his Instagram nonsense, like all of his off the field stuff, all that. People say he's got talent. If you're looking for a guy that looks like an old school quarterback, there's your guy. He's actually related to Jim Kelly somehow. I think he's his nephew or something like that.
Huh.
They've got him projected in, let's see here, the 6th, 7th round. If I get him undrafted, I'll take a flyer on it. I mean, you might be able to pull it together, but he seems like a head case. And then everybody else, have fun selling insurance, man. It's a rough class for quarterbacks, but I wanted to get it on the record like I did last year where I had Dak Prescott rated very highly.
I think you also had a CFL quarterback rated very highly, but
dude, it's been 1 year. Do not be surprised if you see Vernon Adams in the NFL in the next 4 years.
Well, it could be.
Yeah, like that's another guy I had rated highly last year was Brandon Allen. And if you go and you look up some Jag stuff right now, obviously nobody's excited about Bortles. They're definitely not excited about Henne. I bet you Brandon Allen gets some play this year, and he could be good.
I don't know who that is.
He's the guy out of Arkansas. A lot of people said I don't know who he is, but he's got great anticipation, great accuracy, knows how to run an offense. I think he could be like a Rich Gannon at some point. That's who he looks like to me.
What do you say we get into our schedule analysis from Hong Kong Hawk?
Okay.
Dave Blomquist.
Okay. I'm not even going to try to be a jerk about this right out of the gate.
Let's see what he has to say first.
That's what I'm saying. I'm trying not to be a jerk about it.
Hey, Brandon. Hey, Adam. And hello, everybody from Hong Kong. So in the last podcast, Brandon was calling me out and telling me that he expected that I would be calling in with my schedule analysis. And here it is. So first, I just want to level set. I am not a conspiracist. I am an analyst. I look at the schedule. I look at the anomalies. And if I see things that are really quite obvious, then I point them out. As you can remember, this all started about 2 years ago when I thought Seattle's schedule was set up for them to fail because they had just appeared in their second straight Super Bowl, and the NFL, as you know, loves parity. And that year, Seattle had to face 4 teams coming off of a bye, all at home, and they had to face a team coming off of a Thursday at home as well. And they were very tired at the end of the year. Their net rest days that year was negative 21. They had their opponents rested 21 more days than they did. And you could see at the end of the year that they were tired. They were not playing into the fourth quarter. They were losing leads. So this is for real. And you can't really say that the NFL was doing any of this on purpose, but we've seen a lot of articles lately how the NFL has pulled the curtain back and said how their schedule is made. They put a lot of stake into requests from the teams, like teams that don't want to play in Florida in September. And of course, an element of that is teams not wanting to go up to Seattle when they're tired. So it was a bad year that year where they just granted everybody's request, and Seattle faced a lot of teams off their bye. And I just find that was a little too coincidental to not be on purpose. So then the next year, the fact that Seattle had to cross country 8 straight times between weeks 7 and 15 also was something that I felt tired them out a little. They had definitely a more favorable schedule as they only faced one team coming off of a bye and no teams coming off of a Thursday. And their net rest was actually +5 last year. But it just seemed like it was offset by having them fly back and forth so much. And again, I felt at the end of the year they were beat up. They were tired. So let's take a look this year and see how they've addressed that. I'm really excited about this year's schedule. They only have the one trip across country to the East Coast. It's to play the Jaguars. And they actually have -4 net rest days, which is the 5th worst in the NFL. But if you want to look at somebody who just got totally screwed this year, the New York Giants are at -21. They have the same problem that Seattle had 2 years ago, and they are going to be super tired at the end of the season. The next worst is Detroit with -13 rest days. Now, you look at the teams that might do really well under this circumstance is the Kansas City Chiefs, who face no teams coming off bye, no teams coming off Thursday, no teams coming off of a Saturday game, and they are +14 in net rest. So the Kansas City Chiefs are going to be a very fresh team at the end of the season, and I would expect that they're going to do pretty well. The only other negative thing about this Seattle schedule is they have to go to San Francisco after a Monday night, after San Francisco's bye, and this will also be San Francisco's 3rd straight home game. Now, we had a similar situation last year when we played Buffalo on Monday night, and then we went and played the Patriots after their bye, and I was all in a bunch about that, but the Seahawks ended up winning that game. I was really happy. So they proved that they can be faced with some kind of adversity and still win a game like that. So I think that this year is going to be a much different year. I don't think they're going to be as tired of a team at the end of the year. I think they're going to do very well. Of course, the X factor is injuries or a team coming out of nowhere like Dallas did last year. But I would be very optimistic, and I'm going to calm down on the conspiracy talk for at least 1 year. So hope you guys have a great day, great season, and go Hawks.
I'm proud of Dave. I didn't have to go find my my X-Files style music to play underneath his call this year.
Right. I didn't even have to figure out how to make my tinfoil hat fit over my headphones either. Look, the idea of net rest days, I guess I'm not familiar with the concept. Compared to what? Compared to the other teams?
Yeah, compared to the teams that you're facing, are you getting equal or more rest than your opponents?
In that week?
Dave's point was go back to the year where a lot of teams were coming off their bye, so they had a lot more rest days leading up to playing the Seahawks.
Yeah, so here's why that's wrong, and I'll tell you exactly why it's wrong. He's correct in identifying that in the year that we lost to Carolina in Carolina off our second Super Bowl run, the team was definitely tired down the stretch. He's absolutely right about that. The problem is he's wrong about the reason. The reason they were tired going down the stretch is that the Seahawks had played through the divisional round, Russell Wilson's first year, in the Super Bowl the following year, the Super Bowl the following year after that, then going into that season. Those are 3 deep runs in the playoffs. As much as that's more so than anybody else in the league over that time period.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense to me. That your reasoning makes less sense to me because you have a whole offseason to rest, whereas this is actually measuring the amount of rest that you're
a month
you're
less
getting.
of offseason than every one of the teams that didn't make the playoffs. You talk about 4 days net rest. We're talking about a month of net rest.
But I'm saying if I go for a run in February, and it can be, like a 15-mile run, farther than I've ever run before.
Sure.
I guarantee you by September, I'm going to feel okay enough to go running again.
Yeah, that's exactly right. But here's the difference. Say you ran that 15 miles, right? And you're trying to get better for the next season. So you put in extra effort at the end of the season. You have to sit and recover longer before you can start working out to get better. Your recovery period is shorter. You don't have as much time to get your body recovered and then start working out again for the next season. You're flat wore out. A lot of people kill LeBron James in a lot of ways, right? But I think this is last year was his 6th straight year that he's reached the NBA Finals. When you start adding up minutes, that's why the players in the NBA are retiring earlier, because they came into the league earlier there for short period of time where guys were coming direct out of high school. It wasn't about what age you ended up being when you were wore out. It's how many minutes you put on your body before you're worn out.
Okay, well,
and that's exactly how it is for football players.
Take that then, and then compound it with the fact that the Seahawks are less rested, playing guys who have been more rested within the season. And to me, it seems like a compounding factor and a reason why you might not perform as well going down the stretch.
I guess. I just think that the cumulative effect of 3 straight seasons of going deep has a much higher effect on your overall stamina than whether a guy gets 2 extra days of rest than you do sometime through the season.
He's looking at it from an overall perspective. And
that's my point. He's not looking at it overall enough. You got to look at it over the seasons. I think it's more of those accumulative effects than it is just the schedule, man. Look, the schedule's the same for everybody. You play 8 games at home, you play 8 games away, you get a bye week, and that's that. And that's that. It really is. And the idea that, they got to travel all the way across the country. Give me a catfish break, all right? Like, I fly from Montana down to Atlanta, Florida, like all that, all the time. You know how hard it is to sit on an airplane for a couple hours? It's not hard. It's not hard. You're literally in a recliner in the sky flying. It's not hard. And then the time zone shift is impossible. I get up and I go in the mill at 5 a.m. Eastern time every time. You know what it doesn't feel like? Any earlier than 5 a.m. anywhere. 5 a.m. is just freaking early. It's just what it is. Doesn't really much matter. People put too much thought and time into all that, man. 8 games at home, 8 games away, and you play your division opponents twice throughout the year, and then whatever outside divisions you end up playing through the quirks of the schedule, like whether they're strong or not. Like, that's the biggest issue throughout all of it.
Well, one thing that I did like in looking at the other team schedules, Adam, is that the 49ers and the Arizona Cardinals had a lot more 10 a.m. starts than the Seahawks do.
Doesn't matter.
It may not matter, but both. I think the Cardinals may have been winless in their 10 a.m. starts last year.
Out of how many?
Like 4 or 5.
They had 4 or 5 10 a.m. starts last year?
Yeah.
They also sucked last year, so I guess there's that too.
Yeah. Well, I know for sure that the 49ers lost all of their 10 a.m. starts because the only teams that they won against were the Rams.
They also really sucked last year. Maybe be a better football team instead of worrying about what time you play.
Yeah. Well,
that'd just be my suggestion. I mean, I know I'm old school, but like, play better. Go to bed 2 hours earlier.
What do you say we get into some reviews and some email and some do better and better at life?
Sounds awesome, man. We had some more reviews.
We do.
People are going to town, man.
I know. Well, before we do that, let's go to seahawkerspodcast.com/auction and see what's going on at Pristine Auction, because as we've talked about, good place to get some nice value in terms of Seahawks autographed merchandise. And I see a couple of items here that are standing out to me. A Steve Largent signed full-size authentic Pro Line helmet with a Hall of Fame 95 inscription. There's a framed Marshawn Lynch jersey, and this is going to be pretty nice. It's already at almost $300, so you're going to have some competition for that one.
Oh, I kind of want that.
I do too. And same with a Russell Wilson framed jersey as well. So, I mean, for a nice jersey, you're going to pay $300.
Right.
This is in the frame and autographed by the player.
Yeah, it's ready to rock. Like, and we know you don't like having things framed. So
I don't like that's too much work to me. I like to have the work already done.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's too much work to hire somebody else to do it for you when it shows up. I get it. But hey, now look, the good news is that if it did show up in a frame and you wanted to take it somewhere else other than your home, you have a big truck you can put it in the back of and you can haul it all the way there.
That's true.
Yeah. Yeah. You use that truck. You can be a truck guy.
I'm having a great time being a truck guy, but I'm also having a great time being a Pristine Auction guy because
that I have noticed. Yeah. Yeah.
We have our prizes set for this upcoming season, just about. We have 2 autographed replica jerseys, one by Steve Largent, one by Kurt Warner. We have 3 signed mini helmets, one from Cliff Averill.
That's cool.
And one from Kurt Warner. And if we don't get to 300 members of the flock, we're going to have the Pete Carroll autographed mini helmet too.
And that's all cool stuff you listed there that you got off Pristine Auction, man.
Yeah, and the thing is, you don't even have to wait to find out if you win the Pick'em League. You can just go to seahawkerspodcast.com/auction and you can find the gear that you want and not have to wait.
There you go.
Go to Pristine Auction, Pristine, and check out what they have there. Well, moving on, we don't have any new members of the flock to report this week, but Robert Asbury upped his pledge, and he is going to be in the Pick'em League, Adam.
Smart move, because there's going to be, I think we decided, our top 5 might get prizes this year?
The top 5.
In the Patron Pick'em League.
Yes, the top 5 in the Patron Pick'em League. Our members of the flock, they are going to get prizes. We will still have one top prize for our regular Pick'em League, but more prizes for the people who are in the flock.
Yes. So thank you very much for your updated donation. And we need to get to that 300 number for members in the flock, man. This has to happen.
Yes.
And like a week where just somebody upgrades, which is great. Don't get me wrong. That's not enough, man. We just said, are you getting better? Are you getting worse? I mean, I don't know what you can say. This was a net neutral week. Like, that can't happen, man. We got to do better as an entire podcast nation.
You can go to getintheflock.com if you want to be a part of the flock. Getintheflock.com. Join up there. And yes, getting in at the Pick'em League level will be advised, because lots of prizes coming up in this year's Pick'em League.
Yeah, and if you don't want to reward us for a bunch of speculative shows throughout the offseason, well, now's the time to start donating, because we don't have to do that going forward now. Like, they're going to be better shows starting next week.
Exactly.
I feel pretty confident of that.
Well, let's get to some reviews. First one here from the Sofa King via the Canadian iTunes store says, so much fun.
I may have to dispute their username. I mean, there wasn't a serious competition for Sofa King. I feel like I could be in the running. But like, that's just a bold statement. That's all I'm saying.
Sofa King, yeah.
I don't know. He might be Sofa Crown Prince for all I know. Like, I might have him beat on that. I'm just saying.
It says, so much fun. This podcast is incredible and so much damn fun. I've been listening for around 6 months, and it's great listening to these guys talk about the Hawks. They always have such fresh and well thought out takes on the NFL and the Seahawks. It's such a great way to keep up on the team in the offseason. I can't recommend this show enough. I am going to have to increase my monthly flock amount because the content is just too good. Go Hawks.
Nice. All right, never mind. I take it back. Crown him. He's the king. That was great. Look, the idea that they're fresh takes, that might be true. Well thought out, though. That's iffy. That's iffy. At least on my end, man.
Let's get to some email. First one here from Dan Weinholtz in Idaho. It says, I am listening to your podcast now. I want to point out that Mo Alley-Cox is not draft eligible, so we wouldn't have to use a draft pick on him. He can sign at any time. Next up, a big do better for Adam. Did John Schneider have until training camp to sign Eddie Lacy? No. Did he have the ability to wait to see who was available during training camp? No. I think Adam needs to pick now if it is going to be comparable to the Lacy signing. Come on, man. Do better. Just kidding. I got nothing but love for you guys and the show. Go Hawks.
All right, good. Because, like, what I'm going to pick an offensive lineman that doesn't get signed or decides he doesn't want to play?
I think you have to pick from that pool of free agents that were signed in that vicinity of Eddie Lacy, during the free agent signing period.
Why?
To be comparable, like he says.
No, they're both free agents, right?
Where would you spend that money?
If a guy signs in a month or he signed a month ago, they're both free agents. What's the difference?
So what you're saying is, instead of signing Eddie Lacy, you would just do nothing.
No, I told you exactly what I would have done. I would have signed 1 to 2 veteran offensive linemen. And the thing is that they're not going to sign now, much like Marshawn Lynch isn't going to sign early with anybody, because they don't want to go to training camp. They don't want to go through the mini workouts. They don't want to go through all that. So just because China Food Eddie is ready to go through all of that early and signed early, that doesn't mean these guys are any less signable. They're just not going to do it now. You can't put a gun to a guy's head and make him sign. So what am I supposed to do? Like, if you're John Schneider, you go to King Dunlop and you're like, I want to bring you in. And he's like, no, I don't want to sign right now. What are you going to do? Like, drug him and then, like, take his hand and, like, write his signature on the paper? Like, you can't make him do it.
So you want King Dunlap, but you have to wait to see who he's going to sign with and for the amount.
It's just an example. I just pulled out a name. Okay.
Right. But somebody like that.
Yeah, one of the older veteran offensive line, Ryan Clady, or, yeah.
And you need to make sure that they don't retire like the dude from the Vikings.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Jake Long just retires up and out of nowhere. He's just done playing, you know?
And our last email from Mike from Portland said, I just listened to your pod from this week, and I have some non-football comments. This is the off-season, so I think it's okay. First, agree with an emailer this week that it is cool that Adam is taking his daughter to bassoon lessons. Bassoon is an awesome instrument. Like the dude at Adam's music store said, it is, quote, the scholarship instrument. I was a music major in college, and there was a dude who was a crushing saxophone player who didn't get a dime of scholarship money. Dude was a sub-mediocre bassoon player, and the music department gave him money to play bassoon in the symphony. Brandon, your comments about the higher-ranking military coin being better doesn't always hold true. When I served, I was given a coin from the command sergeant major in charge of the Army School of Music. The guy was 5'0", yet was a total badass. He was a funny and easygoing dude who had done some crazy stuff during Vietnam. Then he went on to play trumpet for Dizzy Gillespie's band before later being in charge of training Army musicians. It might just be my bias after my years of being an NCO, but his coin was cooler than the 2 coins I got from generals. At one point, some of my buddies who were specialists, for the non-military people, that is a fairly low-ranking enlisted soldier, who were giving specialist coins out to people, which was funny and awesome. Thanks for all your hard work.
I don't even understand all the rankings, but I understand that is funny.
That is funny.
I get that, yeah.
Thanks for all your hard work, gentlemen. I love the podcast. Go Hawks, from Mike.
Mike, that was a solid off-season email. I approve, and thanks all the way around. I was also a crushing saxophone player, but no, the scholarships, they dried right up. I should have played a double reed instrument.
You should have.
Yeah, I may have been able to get a scholarship for being able to play the French horn. I was a middling French horn player.
Oh,
but yeah. But I didn't start till I was a freshman in high school on the French horn. I played the saxophone since the 5th grade.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
Yeah, so I'm glad that Mike backed it up. That means that maybe I don't have to get as rich as I think I need to over the next 4 years to send my kid to school because she's got some lofty goals.
But see, now you just have to hope that the word doesn't get out about the bassoon playing. Hopefully Isabel's far enough along that nobody's going to catch on to this before she goes to college.
Right, now that the cat's out of the bag, so say the kid's starting now in about the 5th grade or so, that's about a 4-year jump start. So that means that by the time Isabel is just getting done with college, that next wave of bassoon players to flood the market would just be coming in. So we're okay.
Just like there's trends in offensive linemen and cornerbacks.
Exactly.
I have to think that there's trends in musicians.
Yes. No, you're hitting on one right here. This is the kind of analysis you can't get anywhere else, folks.
Nowhere else.
Yeah.
And with regard to the coins, I have to agree with Mike that just because it's a higher ranking coin doesn't mean it's a cooler coin.
Right.
I just think in terms of the drink buying, I think that's how the rankings go. And I don't know if it goes by the coolness factor. It should. Because
I think it ought to.
If I had a specialist coin, I think it should take down, any general coin, because who has a specialist coin?
Yeah, exactly. Apparently a couple dudes. Yeah.
A couple dudes.
Yeah. Look, and the thing is I'm going to guess there's a lot more specialists than generals. So in numbers, they could take out the generals. I'm just saying.
All right, Adam, what do you say we get on to do better and better at life?
Sounds like a plan, man.
My do better this week is for Bob McGinn of the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. And this last week, I don't know if you saw this, but apparently he does this every year. He publishes any of the Wonderlic scores he comes across. And with this, it was with the running backs. And I think not only Bob has to do better on this, but I think the NFL has to do better, because if I were a player at this point, I would stop taking the Wonderlic test at the combine. For one, I don't think teams care, because there's a lot of great players that don't score very highly on the test. And two, from what I read, I guess the thing is that Bob doesn't seem to be putting anyone down in the way that he posts the scores. It's more informational, but he's facilitating it. Right. And these are numbers that aren't supposed to be public. And other news outlets, they see this, and then they're the ones that post it in a way to put down these guys who, they're not there to play school. They're there to play football. And to me, a running back scoring an 11 on a Wonderlic test, dude, you're there to run the ball.
Right. It don't make no never mind to you.
And for two, it's one thing if it's a placement exam. That's not what these guys are there for. So why would you even take this all all that seriously?
I think it depends on the position. Yeah, really.
Yeah, for a quarterback, I feel like that's maybe more of a measurable in terms in offensive linemen. A lot of those guys are very intellectual, and maybe they put more stock into it. To me, I don't see the point. One, it might be important for them to take the test in some way. Some teams might find those scores important, but for Bob McGinn to be publishing them, there is no reason why I even care or even want to know. And for putting them out there when they're not supposed to be public, do better.
Well, where did he get them?
How do reporters get anything?
Well, that's what I'm saying. If you're a reporter, it's your job to get clicks, and somebody hands you some good info. It's not like you're giving out personal information something embarrassing from the fourth grade, or a medical issue, or a personal relationship between themselves and their mom, or something like that. It's just a test score. It's like if somebody released my ACT scores tomorrow. Well, whoop-de-doo-da-day. I don't care.
Well, that's part of my point is it really even news?
No. Not
so
really.
If you're a news person, then why do it?
Well, some people click on it.
Well, people click on his article anyway. He's running down the list of all the running backs that he's grading out. That's all he's doing.
So this was just an addendum to his running back grading?
Just within each paragraph of how he's speaking about each particular running back, he puts in their Wonderlic score. And apparently so
kind of with his 40 time with,
Right.
So it's just another bit of information to put together.
Yes, and I don't necessarily have a problem with how it's laid out in the article. It's that he's facilitating these other places to try and get their clicks by making more of it than they should.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What a catfish. I'm pretty sure that I'll have to get catfish. I don't know.
All right, who you got for Do Better, Adam?
All right, my Do Better this week is for the Georgia Tech Research Institute. Why? Because they are harboring in the era of the destruction of mankind. That's what they're doing. They're bringing us all to our death, our eventual death from our mechanical overlords. This is happening.
How you're setting this up makes me think this is how you should have led the show, because this sounds important.
It is important. Georgia Tech implemented a test the other day of 2 autonomous swarms of drones to dogfight one another, and then figure out, see how their artificial intelligence did all of the tactics and things like that to try to destroy the other. They took. Now, here's what has me alarmed about that. When I hear a swarm of something, I think bees. Yeah. And a swarm of bees is terrifying. They can totally destroy you. There's nothing you can do about it, right? Because they're everywhere. You got your hands flailing. There's nothing you can do. How about a swarm of drones? with freaking missiles and machine guns, and they can think for themselves and like adjust their tactics and everything in there. This might as well be Skynet. We're all going to be dead when Georgia Tech Research Institute's done with this. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for ending humanity. So to Georgia Tech, do better.
Every time I see something like this, I am reminded of the Terminator movie and how all of this is a bad idea. Go back to when those cheetah robots were developed. Those were terrifying.
Yeah.
And we cannot be making robots that can run us down and that are faster than us and smarter than us. It's not good news.
And work together as a swarm?
Right.
Yeah.
That sounds bad.
One Predator drone is bad enough. Like, that should be enough to put the fear of God into you, right? I mean, you don't even see it coming. It shoots you from 46 miles away, which is accurate. You can look that up. It's exactly 46 miles. That might not be true. But the swarm of drones, a whole swarm of them at once, that's bad news bears, man. Can you imagine?
I don't like it.
I don't like it either. It's no bueno.
We need, let's move on to some happier times and better at life.
So for my better at life than Skip Bayless this week, it's for the March on Science. So
where were they in stopping this, though?
Right. That's what I'm saying. So, like, it's a little contradictory this week, but, hey, we'll take the good with the bad. Physics and, chemistry and all of that, man. Genetics, all that. It's important stuff, it turns out. It's what's going to keep us from dying from swarms of drones. It's the only way that we're going to be able to protect ourselves. And people have really seemed to forget about the STEM courses in education. I mean, I see some of the stuff that my daughter comes home with homework and the classes she's required to take. Well, they're dumb. They're dumb classes. Like, I mean, we really need to put a big focus back in the STEM fields. If we're ever going to stay ahead of the rest of the world, it's going to be because we're more technologically advanced and we're the most innovative and we have the most educated and we have the most innovations, and we're falling behind. And I think the March on Science was a good way to get people out there and to make really witty signs to bring their point forward. And my only problem is that I somehow didn't get the invite. I don't know how I'm not on the list. I also didn't get an invite for the Women's March, but that seemed like, that makes sense being that I'm all like a dude and stuff. But not getting the science invite, man, the March on Science, I don't know. There's something messed up.
You've been a big proponent of science on the show.
I know.
In these segments.
Yeah, just in these segments, like, let alone the history of the show. So if they can just get me on the list, that'd be great. But otherwise, for everybody who marched in the March for Science, you guys are all better at life than Skip Bayless.
Indeed. My better at life this week is for Sack Machine, Cliff Averill.
Ooh, the housing commissioner.
The housing commissioner, yes. And seeing his tweets this last week as he visited Haiti and the 12 houses that he built to make good on his promise.
That seems to work, the number 12 there.
I know. Yeah. Well, he had the 11 and a half sacks, but I was glad to see that they went ahead and built 12 full houses. I didn't think a half a house would work.
No, because what rooms do you leave out? Do you leave out do you put in like a bedroom, a bathroom, and a kitchen, or in a living room, but no kitchen? Or do you leave out a living room and have like a bedroom, kitchen, bathroom? I don't know. Maybe you leave out the
time
bedrooms.
that you waste in trying to figure that out, you could have built the whole house by then.
That's probably a good point.
Yeah. And I enjoyed seeing Cliff Averill because he showed us pictures of him with the families that had moved into all of these houses. And the other thing that he did, he put on a football camp while he was there. And guess who was there? Marshawn Lynch, Michael Bennett, both there to help out at his football camp. Awesome. So for coming through on his promise to build a house for each of his sacks, Cliff Averill, better at life than Skip Bayless.
I agree, man. That's why I was surprised when that Cliff Averill jersey from Pristine Auction came in on your birthday, by the way. I forgot to wish you a happy birthday on the pod last week. So Merry birthday. I was surprised that didn't just become a birthday jersey for you. It should have. It looked good on you.
Yeah, it was weird how it kind of came out of the package and onto my back. But
yeah. Just
I
slipped
told
right
you
on there.
when we were at the Clink, I was trying to find a Cliff Averill jersey.
I know.
And now I'm just going to have to settle for a replica Pristine Auction signed jersey instead of the
replica one you'd have bought at the store.
At the Clink and not autographed.
Right. Well, I mean, if you got to, you got to. Way to take one for the team, man.
I'll take one for the team
Chest
on
bump.
this one.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, thank God the silly season, for the most part, is now over. By the time we talk to you guys next time, it'll be draft day. Or no, it'll be past draft day.
Draft day.
We're going to have new dudes. They're going to be awesome. Like, we're going to be super excited about them. Maybe we'll draft 16 more running backs and I'll have a fit. I don't know. But either way.
That's the fun part, is that you don't know.
You don't know. You don't know. So
I am legitimately as excited for Thursday and Friday. Like, I can't wait.
All right. So on the way out, real quick, Brandon, your prediction for the Seattle Seahawks first round draft pick.
Obi Melifonwu.
I think they're taking Forrest Lamp.
Really?
I think he's going to be there. And I think, just like Mike Mayock suggested, they will run to the podium and select Forrest Lamp.
I like it. Well, we will see if Rob made a prediction. Each of us made a prediction. They're all different.
And mine's wrong, by the way, just so you know.
Well, the thing is that we may all be wrong.
Yep, that's true fact. That's true fact, because we'll trade out and then pick up a 4th and 5th round pick somewhere along the way.
Yeah, but they could still, maybe Forrest Lamp slips to the 2nd round and they get him there.
Hard telling, not knowing.
My pick still stands whether or not they go 1st or 2nd round, early 2nd round.
You want Obi.
That's who I want.
There's got to be a good name for Obi.
Obi-Wan.
Well, no, it's got to be more than that. It can't just be Obi-Wan. It's got to be Obi-Wan.
Well,
something.
If he goes in the 1st round, it's just Obi-Wan.
No, we can do stronger than that. Like,
okay.
Yeah. I don't. The real problem is nothing rhymes with Kenobi.
You need some form of 3-syllable word to go after Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
Sea hockey.
Yeah.
But not that.
Mofoe. I don't know. Something. Get on it, people. Figure it out. It will go from there. I think it's time for us to leave.
Time for us to leave. A big thanks to Rob Staton for coming on the show this week. Dave Bloomquist, thanks for your schedule analysis.
He's also the man.
And with that,
there's only one thing left to say.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's show. If you'd like to support the show, visit seahawkerspodcast.com/153. Once you go there, you'll find a number of ways to support the show, whether or not you want to help us out with a one-time or recurring donation via PayPal, or you can buy stuff on Amazon, and a portion of that comes back to support the show. You can get your Seahawks gear through Fanatics. All the links right there at seahawkerspodcast.com/153. And for our members of the flock this week, a special bonus show, be sure to tune in, and we're going to run down the list of defensive linemen and linebacker prospects the team has visited with, and also a few members on offense that visited since we did our show on offense. Be sure and check it out only for members of the flock. GetInTheFlock.com.